One of the things that we described when we were talking about how important it is to manufacture the medication is about dosages or the amount of the medication. And that means we have to have an agreed upon scale or measurement system to base how much of these medications we're going to be using. That has evolved over time. Originally, drug measurements were crude and imprecise. And this is because the active drug could not really be measured accurately, and we were using something called an apothecary system. This was very widely used at first, and it used things like minim and drams and scruples and grains and teaspoons, but we really don't use those anymore. For some things, like cough medicines, you'll still see that the apothecary has liquid measurements, teaspoons, tablespoons, pints, quarts, and gallons. But for the most part, we've switched over to a different system, the metric system. Well, what is the metric system? The metric system is a more precise and scientific system. And here I have the three different types on this illustration. You see that there is the measurement for length, which is based around the meter, in this case, the centimeter. We have a container that contains volume. This is based on the liter, and we have some powder, which is the weight, and that's based on the gram. So grams, liters, and meter. The nice part about the metric system is it's easy to divide it. It's not complicated by dividing it by 3 or multiplying it by 12. Everything is into 100s, and therefore the prefixes for the measurement are always the same. Whether I'm measuring grams, liters, or meters, the prefixes are all the same. The smallest is nano, which means 1/1000th, as in a nanogram would be 1/1000th of a gram. Micro is 1/1,000,000th of the unit, as in a microgram. Milli is 1,000th, as in a milliliter. Centi is 1/100th, as in a centimeter or a centiliter. Once we get to the measurement itself, we can make it bigger. All of those previous measurements were smaller than. A microgram is smaller than a gram. But if I want to describe 1,000 grams, I'm going to describe a kilogram. If I want to describe a distance that's 1,000 times longer than a meter, I'm going to talk about a kilometer or a kilometer. Another way to measure medications is by using units. There are certain medications that are specifically designed, manufactured, and measured based on their own size and weight. These include things like antibiotics like the penicillins, which are measured in international units, heparins, and insulins. And insulin, by the way, is based on the weight of pure insulin. The illustration behind me shows a syringe that is marked not in milliliters, but in fact in units of insulin. We do not measure the volume of insulin in the metric system using milliliters. Instead, we use the units of insulin involved. So a person who has to get insulin will not get 1 milliliter, they will get 10 units. The value of that unit is going to vary from drug to drug, whether it is a vitamin or whether it is a hormone. Another way to administer medication is by drops. The Latin version of drops is guttae, G-U-T-T-A-E, and this is abbreviated GTT. Medications that go into the ears or the eyes are often measured in drops. With certain active IV medications that are not being given by a computerized pump, we used to frequently give those via drops too. We would measure out the IV at drops. That is falling out of favor because of the advent of computerized technology to safely administer IV medications. Another way to measure is what's called a milliequivalent. These are the molecular weight of an ion divided by the number of hydrogen ion that it reacts with. And it is 1/1000th of an equivalent. Milli means 1/1000. So a milliequivalent is the equivalent of 1/1000th of whatever it is we measure. Milliequivalents are frequently used for things like potassium supplements. Other electrolyte drugs can also be measured in milliequivalents. However, those same medications can also be measured safely in milligrams. Another way to administer medications or to measure medications is by percent. This is a metric measurement that shows the relationship between the medication itself and the solution or substance that it is inside of. Based on that, the whole would be 100 parts. If 5% of that whole was the sugar molecule dextrose, then I could safely say that the solution was 5% dextrose and 95% water. Or I could say that that solution was dextrose 5% water, or D5W. Another way to measure medications is by a relationship between the drug and another substance that's in the same solution. And this is expressed as a ratio. It expresses two numbers with a colon mark between them. A good example of this is the emergency medication known as epinephrine, which is usually administered in a 1 to 10,000 ratio. That is, 1 milligram equals 0.1 milligram for every 1 milliliter of solution. Lastly, we do have some household measurements that we still use when dosing or measuring the amount of medicine. It is an unofficial system that's only used by people in their homes, really. Usually it's silverware teaspoons and tablespoons. It's inaccurate because there's no really standardized time, and it can be anywhere between 4 and 7 milliliters of liquid in a teaspoon. Over-the-counter liquid drugs therefore contain a standardized plastic cup or spoon with markings to ensure of accurate dose measurement.